Start recording. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Again, as stragglers come on or not, they can hop on. If you're good, yeah, I saw a couple messages, Steven stuff like, yeah, you guys can, just hang out on mute. If you want to speak up, just throw on the chat, ask questions, or unmute and speak up. We haven't done, everyone's been kind of busy, kind of working off in their own world and across the various groups and teams. So a hot topic recently has been kind of state of working towards, the release and migration, impending migration after the release or during the release, however you want to refer to it. So I thought it was a good time, like circle back and everyone kind of start, doing these group meetings again and just reporting on the kind of the state of things. And then this will also allow us to coordinate across the various teams, since we have a couple different entities that are putting resources to use. So the client meeting today is mostly going to be focused on wallets and Block Explorer updates. And Greg, I think, will be giving most of that, and I think maybe Jeff will participate as well. And then tomorrow is related, but focused on an API group. Will mostly be focused on really core, like just SDK updates. And then where they're tied together, which I'll probably talk a little bit more about later as we dig into wallets, is we should probably start to take a mindset of a couple, whether it's, Steven and or others, working hand in hand with the wallet devs as the wallets kind of start to productize over the coming, 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks. So as we're trying to hone in, feature complete the wallets, we definitely want some hand-holding and support readiness for any wallet developer, especially if they're new to the ecosystem, right? So anyways, just some kind of intro thoughts and comments. So I will pass over to, actually, I think you can kind of take it yourself. Let me see. I think you can just click on share if you have it in your window.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think you'll just automatically grab it.
So it's going to show my browser. All good.
Yep, showing up on my end.
Okay, cool. So the update's going to be about the wallet first. Then I'm going to go over to Block Explorer and Network Explorer. And we should probably prioritize some wallet. Currently, I sadly only have one build. So there's one wallet that can be tested and used for Catapult. All others have not been able to bring me a build. So I'm not sure. Probably we should prioritize this wallet. You're going to see now that I show it. So let's just go over. Design, obviously something we're going to have to work on it. But feature-wise, the wallet is already Dragon compatible. Mostly Elephant things will not be too much to code. We can send transaction. Currently, sadly, only transfers, but there's a URI tool as well, which ultimately should also allow. This one also only permits to create URIs, but we will later also permit to execute URIs, so that you can execute any type of transaction from here. So currently only transfers. That's going to be extended as soon as we can work on it. This is account restrictions, has to be renamed, and this is delegated harvesting. All Catapult features have been worked on except transaction types. This one's going to be transaction types besides namespaces and stuff. You can already send those. As I said, design is very basic. This is just backend. Those are components coded in Vue. We definitely need a UI, UX guy to work on it. But feature-wise, we are already ready because you can see you can filter transactions. Transactions come with their own transaction details. Very raw, but working. And this is true for all the modules here. Namespace, assets, transactions. So you will see here details about the transaction, about the mosaic, sorry. you will see filtered transactions about Mosaic, and you can also already issue multisig. So what I want to show here is that the wallet pretty much is feature ready. I wouldn't say feature complete, like you said just 2 minutes ago, because of course there's a lot of things. There's a few bugs from Elephant, and there's a lot of things to work on in terms of usability of the components. So that would be it about the browser extension. That's what it can do. And that's actually the desktop build. Now, with this browser extension code comes a very weird build tool to build it as an extension. Now you're going to see what this does. It's a little bit problematic because the extension is actually that. So there's no real extension build. You have to open the wallet, which will in fact open the desktop build. So what I'm proposing here is that remove the focus of this wallet. That we stop saying it's a browser extension, because in fact it's not a browser extension, and we concentrate and focus on making the desktop build of it much more stable and beautiful and stuff like that. So that would be my first question. Can we skip the extension build, or should we affect people and work on having an extension build that is better than that? Passing over if anyone wants to comment.
Yeah, I'm just making some notes. So my first comments are, yeah, I mean, like from a usability perspective, it's kind of pointless to, two comments about the extension. One, definitely from usability, it's like to click on that thing to load the extension, which then loads it anyways, is kind of like, well, you know,
Exactly.
what's the point, right? You might as well just have a shortcut or something. Second is definitely from a build perspective. If we're targeting like a desktop build, or I know it's Electron and stuff's been brought up before, and you know, something that's, you know, either Electron based or whatever best equivalent to you know, V1, NIS1, like nano wallets. So let's just generally throw that under build and distribution kind of questions to finalize. The other thing I'll bring up, which we won't solve here, but there's always the question of, and I'm not an expert in this area, but doing cryptographic functions, you know, specifically anything around keys and signing in the browser in full native like JavaScript has always been kind of, you know, historically frowned upon as far as like full security. And newer browsers, modern browsers and modern computers are, you know, better than others, but most people kind of seem to lean towards that. So I think from like a security review and implementation perspective, really kind of answering that question as far as like, hey, if this is going to run in the browser, right? So the difference of this just running in like whatever browser a user loads it in, like, are they loading it in old IE or Firefox or Chrome XYZ in the different versions? Or is it, you know, quote unquote desktop build? So whatever it is, anyways, I would say that's kind of another point that kind of sticks out to me. That we obviously we're not going to answer that now, but definitely need some review and whatnot. The other thing I'll say is definitely I'll just put down a to-do item. I look at this as just like a, you know, good focus on like, hey, simple functional like UI to get through development and like feature functionality. Definitely to your comment on like UX, like we don't even need any like super crazy advanced UX or cool and too slick. It's like, hey, as long as it's simple, it's relatively clean, things can iterate over time. The UX I'd like to see is, you know, as we iterate, is possibly just from the end user perspective of like, you know, this notion of like transaction, like if you go back to the menu, like I don't, like for instance, like I wouldn't have, I would have like an accounts tab, like I wouldn't have multi-sig tab, right? So like the notion, like I have accounts, I have N accounts, and of those N accounts, X are regular accounts and other ones are multi-sig, and there's a different icon that denotes those. And, you know, obviously they might branch off into a UI branch of like, single sig accounts and multi-sig ones.
I saw that. There it is. Yeah, I totally get you.
And so like, anyways, like that's kind of, I think, more the UX around that versus, hey, this pop-up need, is boring and bland. And even like these,
exactly.
I don't think it's as big a deal. Like any improvement and cleanup, of course, and beautification, of course. But I view that as not a low priority, but a lower priority than just like, hey, let's just start to take this general from a sense of someone that's like, hey, if you step me through it, I can understand the concept of like accounts and what is multi-sig and stuff like that. The other thing I think, we don't want to overdo it, but we probably want to, loop in, obviously David giving like some input and lead on like links here out to documentation for help. Right. So sometimes it might just be conceptual, like a multi-sig account might have a little icon next to it. When you click on it, it's like, hey, it hops out to like multi-sig. Here's what multi-sig is. And this isn't developer docs. This would be other docs that are simplified end user and stuff like that. So again, that's just kind of some stuff that kind of...
there, I think I knew the button exists. It actually exists, but yeah, totally get you. Good point to bring David in and have it organized a bit as well. Also in terms of UX, probably David has good input. Fine, totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah, one point that I didn't mention earlier would be that it can also be built with for mobile. So principal thing the developer told me is about the mobile first design of the app, which really can be something interesting. Now I agree with you with the cryptographic problem, and probably because this app is coded in JavaScript, if we're going to do a mobile build of it, it's going to be even less performant and well suited for cryptography. But the option to be able to build it for mobile and have people install it on their iOS and Android would be something pretty interesting, and that's also why I want to prioritize this wallet.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think just given resources and timing and stuff, like focusing in on at least one single wallet that's going to be like production and, whatever, let's say certified, verified, checked. Everyone's kind of in agreement on usability, MVP of features. And so then again, like we're not going to answer it here, but so if you start looking at, stuff's done in JavaScript, possible options, which we can kind of research. Again, not an expert, and I haven't like implemented full projects, any of this, but obviously taking certain libraries or cryptographic functions and leveraging stuff like WebAssembly, right? Especially if we're doing a desktop build of something, like some stuff could probably be pushed into WebAssembly through either C++ libraries or the like. The other thing, which I just came across my radar, I don't know, was it over the weekend or something? I assume it has a decent coverage, but it might not have full coverage that we would need when you bring up mobile and performance and stuff like that. There's a new framework. There's a language. There's a transpiler that Facebook just put out, and it was specifically for React Native, but it's general. So you basically feed it JavaScript, and it compiles in like I think Swift bytecode or something like that, and also maybe JavaScript or Java for Android, or maybe Kotlin or something. I don't know. I haven't dug into it, but they started pumping that from an open source project perspective, because obviously, given the popularity of React Native, I guess that's going to be their performance answer to squeeze out these last few percentage points, is this transpiling of native JS to bytecode for whatever platform.
Right. So anyways, that's also where it will define performance, like I did, and to be well suitable for cryptography. If you transpile to Swift, it's going to be way better than any Cordova plugin or whatever is going to be used.
Yeah, so or if it's for instance like, just we need to see like which functions, right, when it comes to like signing transactions, and anything, I guess, again, basics, I guess, of key generation and signing, and in theory, I guess, any verifications of transactions. We haven't really talked too much about verifications yet, and kind of the light clients, more secure verification, right? That's stuff that's now possible. I would look at that as a secondary topic that's super important, but like baby
I
steps.
actually have someone proposing this, yes. In the foundation, we had someone in China who proposed an idea of having, well, web pages that can create transactions, so to say. They can prepare them, but cannot sign them. So, and the signing would fall into the responsibility of a mobile app or something like that. Pretty much what you just explained. I think that's also very, very interesting, but we didn't get a build for it, and I cannot show it. So I'm not sure of the status of this other wallet, even though I brought it up in the client status page. I didn't get a status update about this one, so I'm really not sure if we should wait or really prioritize this one.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I would
my
say
fix.
like I definitely would say not wait, but maybe like let's just give an ultimatum. It's kind of like, hey, we're converging around a single effort for now, and if secondary efforts are happening, then it's like, well, they kind of don't matter. Like they will be kind of second-class citizens in effort, focus, and support-wise. If they magically appear in 2 months and it's great as well, then for sure, great, right? That's yet another thing.
All right.
But the reality is, at this point, yeah, waiting for people and looking at like also the mix of like temporary resources versus full-time focused resources, right? So someone who's on a whim, like, oh, I can help and I'll submit like a proposal or something and maybe work part-time for some period of time. Like, I think we're beyond that, right? It's kind of like who's focused, who's dedicated. Let's go.
Right. So
again,
that's
like,
pretty much,
yeah.
That's pretty much what we intend to do as well. So currently there's only 2 guys working on it, but we said we want 2 more guys working on it from China. So there's going to be 4 guys working on it, and we really need to get it done until the beginning of August. When I see all the components, of course there's refactoring to do and stuff like that, but really feature-wise, we are very, very near to what Catapult proposes. Besides all received things, which can actually be very useful for clients, those ones are not yet not in there. But other than that, really, we are very near to feature complete, and that's why it makes sense to work on it. But that's also pretty much it for wallets. I think maybe Jeff wants to inject something about the China wallet. I'm not sure.
One of the big points so far on wallets has been designers getting a good design. So we have people on our team that can make wallets. 4 or 5 people are capable of actually working on wallets, no problem. But we haven't had a good designer. But recently we did get a good design that I like, and maybe it's a little bit too fancy for you, Nate. I don't know, but it's really important to me that everything looks beautiful, because what we have is we have Catapult that's been in development for 3.5 years, and when the public looks at Catapult, most people are not going to judge it by the MongoDB or the API. It's going to be their judge of whether this is a good technology or not. So it's really important to me that when people log on, they don't see this browser wallet that Greg's showing right now.
Did you just struggle because of it?
Struggling a lot. I have some previews if you wanted to see them really quickly of the design that we're working on. And if everybody wanted to see those, I could do them, but Greg would have to stop sharing.
Yeah, hold on. I can show them. I think I know which one you mean, right?
Yeah, if not, I think if you grab it, it will prompt Greg to like relinquish control or something like that too.
Just stopped it. You can go on, Jeff.
Okay. Then I will put that up. Just a moment. I'm getting it all big screen here. So share. Okay, you guys can see my screen. Hello? Uh-oh.
Yep.
It shows on mine.
Okay, you can see the wallet? Yeah? Okay. So let me see if I can go back. Okay, so I'm scrolling back. So this is the dashboard that what you'd see whenever you'd log in. This would be different mosaics, not obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum. You'd have some information, some network information over here, confirmed and unconfirmed transactions on the bottom. Don't worry about market, but we have the basic send, and then we have multi-sig send, cross-chain transfer send, and aggregate transfer send. This is just the simple send right now. We have receive. Then we'll have another tab for harvesting. For wallet management, it's basically how to create or add accounts. I've made a lot of suggestions, but the overall framework is more or less the same in styling and colors. And then services, we have stuff like how to create namespace, mosaics, apostle address book. But I think I want to get rid of address book because really, does anybody in this chat use an address book at all, ever? I mean, I don't. I have wallets on 5 or 10 different cryptocurrencies, and I never use an address book. So I don't feel like it's a necessary feature. And then we have the community part. I really love this part. So we have news coming in, and if you click on one of these, you would get the article, and then voting. The little voting panel here, which was a great improvement on the UI UX of what we used to do for voting, and of course settings. So I'll stop sharing there, but that's kind of what we are looking at. That's the first time I've had a designer that I was fairly happy with, and that's been a big sticking point so far. So I think that we could have those designs done in a week or two, and then the next question that Greg and I would have to do would be how much of this is going to be compatible with that browser wallet extension or not. Like, how easy would it be to make this design switch over? Because
I think it would mostly be relatively easy in general, right? Most of it's just the wireframing and the core templates. So that would be
one of the good parts of this full list of dependencies when you work with Vue and stuff. Packages are smaller and you can reuse them maybe in the extension. So I would second Nate. I don't think that's going to be very hard to do.
So I'd say like most of the effort though is like of all the stuff you showed, I think the thing we need to come to is it's basically like it's all the same shit, but it's kind of two related but separate questions. One question is, what is the agreed upon MVP, right? What's the minimum viable product for a V1 release? Knowing that whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever later, that more features and stuff can come in, right? So that's kind of the first question. I just threw a to-do item. Like, hey, let's kind of start to marshal agreed upon. These are the base features. If we can release with this and nail it well with good UX, then that's functional and that's great, right? Everything else is then kind of like a nice to have and kind of takes second priority. So then with that kind of split of must have and nice to have, that reflects back to the UX. So for instance, like you listed, like on the dashboard, front and center, the left pane that is mosaics. When the reality is, I'm definitely not going to say no one owns multiple mosaics and trades them and stuff. I would never like say that. But when you talk about mass scale, at a mass scale, how many NEM users in general are heavy users of like multiple mosaics, right? Are they like big Zem users and big Dimcoin users and big, Loyalcoin users or something? Like it's not zero, but is it enough percentage to warrant to like have that take up, roughly almost a fifth to a quarter of the horizontal real estate on the homepage? Like having it as an option, yes. Again, these are things that aren't big deals. It's like those little UI widgets can be built out. But so to your point, like I think some of these UI things can be flushed out and then pause and then reflect it back on what's the relatively agreed upon MVP, and then revisit and say, slash this, move this, reduce this, increase this. Because at the end of the day, obviously it's simplicity and like less is more. So I think just like in the other one, having little charts and stuff like you have, having links out to like news and stuff, possibly. It depends on kind of like that's a perfect thing of like, I would say, depending on how much effort that is in both design and implementation, if it's just as easy to kick that over to the web team and then just have a link in there that kicks you out to a browser, another browser tab, and is like, oh, hey, by the way, here's all the other information, and here's the forums, and here's stuff, right? Anyways, like we're not going to do that now. Those are just my comments from like a prioritization perspective. It's like these things can kind of happen in parallel, and then we'll kind of hit like gating factors of like, well, finalize the MVP features and then focus in the UX on just the MVP features, and then assume that everything else is additive, and then hopefully design the UX such that it can be evolved over time without being too jarring, so that if there's an update in 4 to 8 weeks after release, someone's not like, what the hell is this? This is a whole new wallet. It's like, oh, hey, I have a new widget I can add or something like that, right? So anyways, those are just kind of some blanket thoughts where in general design, I think I would say the design you showed is almost as simple as the design that Greg has in the default dev version. It's just cleaner, and it's taken more of a design eye versus developer's eye, right? And it just has a lot more UI components versus just raw functionality. So I think it's great, right? Everything you showed, nothing stood out as like, whoa, this is going to be like a massive overhaul and like really hard to implement. It's like, hey, get some images, some icons, and then it's just a bunch of CSS, pushing pixels essentially.
Right.
Yep. Let's do it.
The one thing I'd add on the features that Jeff, you mentioned, an address book probably wouldn't be needed. I don't think I fully agree with that, because like ultimately, like a lot of these apps are, for all intents and purposes, going to be challenging the likes of banking apps and other, online financial apps, really. And I know a lot of the ventures guys use the address book. I use it. There's a couple other people I've heard of using it. I don't think it's something that just goes completely unused. And if you use any of the banking apps, like they all have, pays that you can save and just kind of very quickly and easily just click those as people to send money to. So I don't think it's something that should just be shelved entirely. Maybe like a rework of it or something to make it kind of more, or I don't know, just.
Well, that's the thing is that it's really easy to add in, because it's a module basically in that services. So as it is right now. So as Nate was saying, I'm more than happy to put it in, but I don't feel it's a priority as the minimal MVP. But we put the address book in Nano Wallet, and I never really heard a lot of feedback on it. Maybe if we took it out, people would complain. So I'm definitely up for it. I mean, that's something we can do. The other thing that I want to mention about NIM is that Catapult wonderfully basically has an address book built in at the protocol level, which is aliases. And what my idea is in the perfect world, it works a little bit like Gmail. So like, I know that you have the alias COD Tycoon, that I don't have to remember your NIM address. I don't have to use your, I don't have to go to the address book. I just go into the send and I start typing K. And then all the Ks come up, and then I type O, and then it narrows down to like 3 or 4 KOs, and I type KOD, and then boom, your name comes up as a suggestion, as something that I've sent to before. I wouldn't necessarily want to have this like searching every alias, because then you get the scammers. But this is what we were doing with the mobile wallet with the hash functionality, is that once you've sent to somebody one time, it goes into a local memory in the app to remember that this is an alias that you sent to before, or this is an address you've sent to before, and then it auto-fills as you start to type in the future.
I think that would definitely be a much slicker solution, I think,
Yeah.
Right. So
I just, while you guys were chatting, one thing that popped in my head is like, we should probably break out. There's some clear features that are like, whatever, like they're definitely locked in, like sending a transaction and shit, right?
Send and receive.
I think like questions like the address book, it's like, well, whether it's in or out, like let's just say like, hey, these things are like obvious maybes, and it'd be great to have them all in. Let's take these, let's throw up a survey and toss it on the forums and on like NemRed. Be like, hey, everyone chime in. Like, do you use address books in V1 and other wallets? And is this a feature you would enjoy, right? And if we get jack shit for a response, or if we get a ton of response and it's either positive or negative, towards usage or not, then that stuff can kind of help influence. In the meantime, regardless of kind of what they respond with, we can still reflect this back on the UX design is going to be relatively simple for it anyways, because it'll probably be the same. Like a list view is a list view, whether you're using a list view of transactions or a list view of contacts. I imagine the design is going to fall out and be relatively the same. So there'll be almost zero work there. And so it's mostly will come down to the implementation of, hey, there's some little background script or something that fires up that will just crawl, the ledger and pull it down and have some local cache for old transactions or something, right? Like that's more of where the headache's going to be in the implementation is how to do that without making the user interact and say, this is my address book. I just want to augment data. I want to say this is Jeff. And if Jeff's account has aliases on it, maybe that background script like says, oh, let me take these 6 addresses from these 6 transactions and just pull and say like, crawl for aliases and stuff like that. So anyways, just a comment. So I added that into like the to-do item. We can maybe make a little survey or something, send it out to folks for secondary feedback at a wider scale.
I have one more update to do that Greg and I haven't talked about yet, is that we've hired this company called Hashio to build out a mobile wallet. They seem to be coming along okay. I keep on missing the meetings, but Greg keeps me updated. And hopefully within the next week or 2 weeks, they'll have a very simple early APK for us to start to look at with very, very, very early.
An iOS build, I would say. I think there's going to be there's going to be an iOS build as well, I think.
Oh, okay, great, yeah. So maybe by the time we have a next meeting, I'll have some basic screenshots to go through and show that, how they're doing.
So with that, so like a quick question there, like what are they using SDK wise? Are they using like Java or Kotlin?
Yeah, the TypeScript, JavaScript SDK. Yeah.
So they're calling that like natively over like
React
so it's basically like a web. They're using React Native.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then a question there, just mark it down on your guys' end. Have them look at. They might get some of it for free, but also have them look at that new framework. Again, it was just announced this week, so I put a note in the document about it, but. If they are already working on that,
they actually were having problems, and I was going to talk about it tomorrow in the SIG API call. They were having problem with TypeScript SDK and React Native, but I'm going to look at this build tool as well. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know how. Again, I know very little. A little bit of knowledge is dangerous, but when you read the notes from one of the core devs on the project, he laid out a series of messages online and. Pointed to some stuff. So I don't know if it's literally like, here's some code, go transpile it, or it's a specific subset of the syntax tree or other. I don't know, but definitely it warrants, as I was thinking about like WebAssembly and stuff where we could take existing libraries. Anyways, just thoughts there. Yeah, anyways, I'll just leave that there.
And then, Greg, do you want to jump in for the Block Explorer?
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. Are we clear on the wallet? I think we're going to hear updates about the wallet on the sig-client chat. Not even sure we really need. We actually, we need to define an MVP, like you say. We need to define what we really want in this first version. And then, but maybe I'm going to share now for the Explorer if everyone is fine with that.
Yep, go for it.
All right. Okay, so that's actually the Network Explorer. We have the problem with the Block Explorer that it has not been worked on in the last month. But we had this prototype of design done. So we all know that the Block Explorer, if we look at the MyGen Block Explorer, which I have running on a private network, it's just a list of blocks. And then you have the block details with transactions list. Or, that's a receive thing, but the sub Merkle path, all those things are just a few pages in the Explorer. So now we're working to make it available in this app. and probably we will hear about first features early next week. We have someone from Malaysia who is also joining that team, because we really needed to move away from just Network Explorer to also having Block Explorer features. Currently, you cannot see a lot. You can only see my node because it's a private network. You can see a few block information, and yeah, network stats. This is just a few graphs. And here's going to be a block list, a transaction list, and hopefully namespace and mosaics listing as well. So yeah, that's the update about Net Explorer. We are going to take over features from this Block Explorer, mostly the same features into this, and hopefully next week we have better progress on this. Anyone some notes?
Yeah, so like initial comments. So definitely, I would say, again, not so much a non-priority, but from an MVP perspective,
exactly.
Network should be highly pushed down, right? Like if you're choosing between a lot of great network data versus and providing
That's
that to the average user versus block data, then I would say show me the freaking block data.
That's the thing, and stalling of this project has actually happened because of trying to query Catapult peers, and then the API was not clear to the developer. But actually, we need this Block Explorer really much. I would agree; it needs prioritization. That's why in the foundation we are also having 3 guys working on it now. So
okay. The other thing
hoping to see progress.
The other thing I'll mention is, while not necessary, I look at this UI and I look at the one Jeff showed for the wallet, and I would say, let's have a focused single effort on UX and feel.
Actually,
and keep it as simple as possible, because also knowing that in the background there's a rebrand effort going on, which might affect colors and stuff like that, right? It's not going to affect, like, at a UI UX level, like I think UI and UX can be designed, and then as the branding falls in, mostly what it would affect would be colors and core icons and stuff like that, right? So the branding effort will have a minimal effect, but I would say, like, looking at this UX versus the wallet one, they're clearly different, and so I would say they should pretty much be the same, like even to the point of being the same CSS like sheets and icon packs and stuff, right? It should almost, even if they're not all using it all, it should almost be like a superset. Like this is the style guide repo or project or something like that. And if you want a list view and you want X, Y, and Z, now it probably won't be that specific. It'll probably be a little siloed, but I would say focus in resources, just like focusing in resources on Wallet and focusing in resources on Block Explorer and stuff like that. Focus in design and say, like, hey, 1 or 2 people or whoever's doing design all work together as like a single unit, or just assign it to one person and have them just solve one. Because by solving one, like if people come into an agreement on like if someone was to sign off on like the wallet UI UX today, quickly porting that to this one and the Block Explorer wouldn't be that big of an issue. But having two mature, parallel, independent pipelines of dev and UX, and then trying to say, oh, how do we rectify these and make them similar? It gets harder and harder. So again, not a huge deal, but something that I view as kind of like relatively important. So I would say focus in, even if it means
I lost Nate.
Yeah, Nate, we lost your sound, buddy.
I think this. There he is.
So yeah, so I'd say even if it means like reassigning or removing people from the project, do not have siloed UI UX for wallet, siloed UI for UX for it. Now you can have multiple people, but there should be one design, right? So if that means one person's like leading the design and the feel and the colors, knowing that the colors might change. So I would say, like, don't be too wed to the colors, but just get a general feel of it, and the general tone, layout, rounded corners, icon sets and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like a general UX spiel. So I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah, so design is going to be probably needs a rework as well so that it fits the wallet. That's a good point, actually, but also not going to be so much of work. I would come back maybe to what we were talking about, that the Explorer needs to work now. Of course, we need to fill a full list of user stories, so there is work on that side. It's not to be unprioritized. And other than that, other than the Explorer, there's a faucet. I don't even know how to say it in English, and the command line tool. Command line tool is being managed by David and is very much ahead. All tasks on GitHub, while the faucet has not been worked on by someone in the foundation. It's a community effort, but it's actually quite flexible. You can have it issue different currencies than CAT currency. You can have it using Docker. You can have it using Node.js, or whatever. So on Heroku as well. So it's pretty cool. It's already ready to work. Last time I checked it, okay, it's still down because of Elephant upgrade, but it's working very nicely. I tested it locally as well. So I don't know if there's any deliverable here that would be missing, but
well, so I'd say so first a question: what's the point of the faucet, right? Like we all know faucet usage for like test nets. That's like pretty straightforward. Right. Is there going to be any faucet for production for like people throwing out like mosaics and dev on production, right? And if the answer is yes, and it's going to exist on testnet and production, I would then say, in theory, possibly faucet gets merged, at least in UI UX, possibly with the explorers, maybe. I don't know. If it's like, no, this is never going to touch mainnet. This is really just faucet for getting dev funds on testnet. One of N testnet, so people don't have to go begging on freaking Telegram like they do now and in the forums. It's more functional, at least in the early days. Then yeah, it makes sense. It can be standalone. It can be whatever, right? So I'd say like that question and decision should be kind of answered and made. And if it's like, no, like this faucet's going to have functionality and utility in production as well, then it's like, well, if we have a network explorer and a block explorer and a faucet, like, and a wallet and all this other stuff, like obviously wallet kind of lives in its own little island, but network, block explorer, and faucet probably maybe should, even if independent repos, and from a UI UX perspective, maybe should be kind of merged together.
Yeah, actually, faucet probably doesn't even belong in this list. This list is more, but yeah.
The faucet is definitely just for the testnet. If the community wants to have a mainnet faucet, like what Japan did, then they can make a mainnet faucet on their own. There's no point in the foundation running a faucet.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of makes it simple.
One point important to mention is hardware wallet is not available in the repository URL. We need to work on that, definitely. And well, during next week, I expect updates about how to build the browser extension as a desktop build, probably using Ionic for mobile builds, but that would probably be it about my update for current client compatibility.
So I would say possibly, okay, so as a gating factor, I would say before we get too far on like having this like mega universal web build that's for desktop and using Ionic or other, I would get a quick handle on this firm that is working on the mobile wallets using React Native, right? Because I would say, like, while options are good, I would say if it seems like this firm is, dedicated and going to deliver, I would throw all mobile weight behind them and mobile focus behind them, and isolate the browser to desktop only. Obviously, desktop, the desktop Mac, the desktop Windows, right, or whatever, right? Like desktop, even if it's Linux desktop. And I would say, because what that's going to do is greatly, I can't tell you if it's like a factor of 3 or whatever, but it's going to greatly reduce a bunch of extra little headaches with builds and tweaking UI UX from the same thing. It's like, hey, let's just have separate trees for UI UX, even though they're all borrowing from the same style guide, right? They're borrowing from the same style guide. It's like, hey guys, implement this in, implement the CSS and these icons and shit in in React Native. You guys do this on desktop.
All right.
Now, if these guys are doing a check-in, next week, and it's like, it's kind of crude, seems like it's going to be functional, then I would say pretty much don't have them do any more work and focus everything on the browser side. So that would be like my general input as far as like
Yeah,
minimizing, right? It's like in my mind right now, less is more. Less SDKs, less wallets. Let's solve it. Let's get like, now if we get to like September and we got like amazing, hey, we have a super solid JavaScript and a super solid Java, and we got a really nice functional that's being reviewed, mobile wallets and desktop wallet. And hey, we got some time to kill here, and there's some resources on the sidelines. Like, sure, we can start on other stuff. But right now, if you say, let's put 3 developers on desktop wallets so they can participate and do mobile, I would say no. if the other guys are going to deliver.
No, that's a good point.
They're pretty new, right?
That's a good point. Basically, the idea of having multiple builds really doesn't even need to exist. It's mostly because the wallet is being worked on as a browser extension, but it doesn't deliver a browser extension. But in the end, I totally agree. We should prioritize having a desktop build out of it, and we have the other mobile app that is actually installable on iOS and Android. So pretty much agree with what you said.
When's the next check-in with those guys?
It's every other Tuesday. Sorry.
So is it next Tuesday? Or
no, it's going to be the next one, the one after that. Sorry. But I'm getting an update this week, so probably gonna get a new build this week, and could share with sig-client people maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, definitely, I would say as you have updates, if it's appropriate. The other thing I would say is when it is appropriate from a functional standpoint, which maybe is after the next release, possibly. The next dot release is coming soon here. Maybe we increase the circle for these builds. And if that means publicly posting the APK to like the Slack channel, then do that. iOS obviously is a little bit different.
Actually requested them to communicate in sig-client a little more when there's updates, when there's problems. For instance, they're having a problem with the SDK, but didn't really communicate it in community yet. We're either working a little private with us, so I will communicate to be a little more maybe transparent and better things out.
Yeah, and then I would say on the SDK API group side, obviously specific, SDK devs, like more and more kind of making themselves available for these guys. Now, obviously, there's a focused effort on polishing off and productizing the and hardening the SDKs. So that's like the focus core effort. But I would say the fact that these people are going to be depending on it, that looking at kind of a tier of support of like the SDK devs being there for like, obviously if it happens on the Slack, it's kind of easiest for people to float in and out as they have cycles. And it kind of brings it up. So if there's a secondary person that has an answer or can direct, even if it means it's delayed by a little bit, I would definitely say that's a good idea.
Right. That's all for me. I'm going to stop sharing here.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, those were kind of the core topics. It's really just check in, get an update on that. And then we can, we have a lot of questions here and kind of like to-dos to follow up on, which we can hustle on, and we should do a follow-up meeting as of now, let's just plan to do the next one next Wednesday. With messaging and everything happening day to day like it is now.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. sig-client should be a little more active again, since we're gonna focus on release now. So, good idea.
And so I guess in general, any other comments or questions or whatever?
I'm good, man.
Same here.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for hopping on. As usual, post on the Slack or whatever as things come up. Tomorrow, we'll do the exact same thing, but for the API group. Again, specifically just SDK check-in, Sandy check. I'll bring up on that group, hey, those of you that are kind of leading SDK efforts, just be as mindful as possible to the Slack and the fact that there's going to be these wallet devs, and we got to treat them as, again, like a first-class citizen of support, even if they're working across organizations, because we don't want any, one, they're testers of the SDK. So they're going to be pretty good verification. They're testers of the documentation, so they're pretty good feedback on what makes sense and what doesn't. But where they do get stuck, or there is a bug or something, or just a question, we don't want that to be blockers where someone's floundering for 3 days because they're trying to do some freaking, certain type of transaction and the SDK is not documented correctly or something, or there's just a bug because it's currently being updated and rewritten for some cat buffer stuff or something. So anyways, just kind of more of a mindfulness than actually any specific to-dos there. So anyways, that will be a kind of a core topic of tomorrow besides just SDK check-in. And then, again, just probably we'll stick with Wednesday for now for next week and then update online as needed. Cool. Ready. Thanks, guys. Have a good day or night or morning, depending on where you're at.
Good day,
All right.
guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.